So I realized that I've done a regular bookshelf tour, but I never did a Kindle bookshelf tour. So here we go. First of all, in Ones to Read, these are the books on my Kindle I haven't read yet. There's Paper by Ian Sansom, and it's kind of in praise of paper, or a history of paper kind of, and it's kind of ironic to read it on a Kindle. Then Marmion by Sir Walter Scott. It's a long epic poem, and it's mentioned in Jane Eyre, and because I love Jane Eyre, I had to read that. Then there's Only Human, a Doctor Who book, because I'm crazy about Doctor Who. Then Jane Austen Girl, which I don't really know anything about, but it was free, and I liked the title, so I got it. Then Copperhead by Tina Connolly. It's the sequel to Iron Skin, which was a dystopian retelling of Jane Eyre. Since I read the first one, I have to read the second one. Then Across a Star-Swept Sea, which is also a sequel. The first one in this series was a dystopian retelling of Persuasion by Jane Austen. This one is a retelling of The Scarlet Pimpernel. Then there's two kind of modern classics, Miss Bunkle's book and Miss Bunkle Married, which I don't really know much about, but they were really cheap and looked interesting. Then The Meeting Place, which is a prairie romance, and The Choice, an Amish romance, both of which were free. Then The Complete Works of Anthony Trollope. I've read a bunch by Anthony Trollope, the Palliser novels and the Barsetshire novels, and now I'm working my way through the rest. So even though this is one title, it actually has quite a few in it, but it'll take me quite a while to finish that. Then Curiosities of Literature Volume 3 by Isaac Disraeli. Isaac Disraeli is the father of Benjamin Disraeli, the English Prime Minister, and I was interested to read this. It's really long. I already read volumes 1 and 2, but that took me quite a while. Then ABCs, that just has the Kindle letter and the regular unimportant stuff. Then All About Austen, it has mostly sequels and retellings of Jane Austen. So Persuade Me is a modern day retelling of Persuasion. So is a modern day Persuasion, but I liked Persuade Me much better than a modern day Persuasion. Among the Nameless Stars is a prequel to For Darkness Shows the Stars, which was a dystopian retelling of Persuasion. Then Searching for Captain Wentworth was kind of a time travel going into Persuasion. The Knights of Derbyshire was a sequel to Pride and Prejudice, but it was too crazy for me. It had Darcy's daughter being like some kind of a werewolf samurai thing, and that was just too way off for Jane Austen. Twixt Two Equal Armies was a Pride and Prejudice retelling, but I think the original is much better. Then Charlotte, which is Pride and Prejudice told through Charlotte's eyes, it was alright. Then My Dear Charlotte, which is a novel written as if it's in Jane Austen's voice back in the 1800s. Now, here, these ones are all organized by author. So one by Louisa May Alcott, kind of a lesser known work of hers. Then I have Jane Austen's in here. They were all available for free except Sense and Sensibility. I don't know why Sense and Sensibility, that's a hard thing to say, isn't available yet for free on the Kindle. And of course I've read these all in paperback and real physical copies, but I also reread them on my Kindle. Then Frances Hodgson Burnett. I love A Little Princess and The Secret Garden, so I read these, which were more obscure works of hers, and they weren't nearly as good as the well-known ones. Then Tarzan of the Apes by Edgar Rice Burroughs. I read the first one, and now I kind of want to read more of them, because there are a bunch of sequels. Then one of my favorite authors, Georgette Hare, and all of these, I have 18 altogether. During Boxing Week last December, they were all available for $1.99, so I had to pick them up because my physical copies are falling to pieces because I've read them so much. Then, same with this, a bunch of books by Lucy Maud Montgomery, and I have them all in physical copies, but these were all available for free, so I had to get them. And so I haven't actually read these ones yet on my Kindle, but I will next time we go away. Then Edith Mary Pargeter, who's better known as Ellis Peters, who writes the Cadfile mysteries, and I had read all of the Cadfile mysteries that my library has. These ones my library didn't have, and they were quite reasonably priced, so I read all those. They're kind of slow, poetic-seeming mysteries that happen in the Middle Ages. Then Robert Louis Stevenson. Kidnapped, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and Treasure Island. I was surprised that I hadn't really read these when I was a kid, because I was really, really into classics, but I guess I read more what I considered girly classics, not so much classics that I considered were for boys. I don't know what I was thinking, really, but I read these recently, and they are all very good. Then Sarah Chauncey Woolsey, who's better known by her pen name Susan Coolidge. This is one of the reasons why I got a Kindle, because when I was growing up, I had these books. The What Katie Did series. I had the first one, What Katie Did at School, and then the third one, What Katie Did Next. And I thought that that was the last one, but not very long ago I realized it wasn't, that she had written Clover, which is the fourth in the series, and In the High Valley, which was the fifth in the series, but I couldn't find physical copies anywhere, and when I saw that they were available for free on the Kindle, I had to buy a Kindle. Then Versus, A Little Country Girl, and Eyebright are some less well-known stories of hers, and they were good too. Then here are some children's books. I definitely recommend The Incorrigible Children of Ashton Place. This is the second and the third book in the series, The Unseen Guest and The Hidden Gallery. I paid for those. They are well worth it, and they have beautiful pictures, like you can see here. The illustrations are great. Of course, in the physical copies, you get the whatchamacallit, the cover. The cover's in color. Then A Horse Called September, which was kind of a YA book, but written maybe 30, 40 years ago. And it was kind of refreshing to have a YA book where the main character wasn't trying to find a boyfriend. She was actually interested in other things, so that was interesting. Grimm's Fairy Tales, a classic, must-read kind of thing. Then The Leopard Tree, which was about some children in Africa trying to make it to America. They had a specific goal in mind, and it was quite touching. Then here are some children's picture books. These were all free. And Orangey the Goldfish. That one. Isn't it cute? That one was my favorite. And these ones are all picture books by Gerald Hawksley. And I have a whole bunch of those ones. And they were all free too. And they're really good. My niece had me read them all to her, and then she wanted more and more and more. She wanted me to reread them to her. They all have nice illustrations and are pretty funny. Then general fiction. These are two historical fiction ones. Tempest at Dawn was about revolutionary America, and Montfort, Middle Ages in England. They were okay. Then some classics. Siddhartha, The Jungle Book, Heart of Darkness, Frankenstein, and Three Men in a Boat, which I read for the first time in the Kindle, and I don't know how I hadn't read Three Men in a Boat before. It is so good. It is so funny. You have to read that one. Then Jane Eyre I had read many times before I got it on the Kindle, but I love Jane Eyre. Then mysteries. So The Good Night was a medieval mystery that happened in Wales. It was okay. Invisible, I won't even bother talking about it. It was alright. Then Rex Stout, Too Many Clients. I love Rex Stout's Nero Wolfe mysteries, and I had almost all of them except this one, and so I had never even read it before. My library never had it, so I had to buy it for Kindle, and I was able to read it. Then here, The Perils of Morning Coffee and Christmas Crumble. They're both short ebooks. They're only available for the Kindle, and that's one nice thing about the Kindle. You can buy these short little books, and they're really cheap. Then the Sherlock Holmes, I'd read that. I have a physical copy, but since it was free, you have to get it if it's free, right? Then all of these are by Rhys Bowen, and 3 are novellas, just available on ebook. and 3 are full-length novels, and she writes 3 different series. The one series is this one, the Her Royal Spinous Mysteries. Then these ones, Through the Window and The Face in the Mirror, are from her Molly Murphy series. And then Evan Can Wait, Evan and Elle, and Evanly Choirs are from her Evan Evans Welsh Policeman Mysteries. And I like the Her Royal Spinous Mysteries and the Evan Evans Mysteries the best. The Molly Murphy Mysteries are okay, but I like her other ones better. Then in the romance section, Iron Skin, which I talked about before, the sequel I have in my ones to read catalog or folder. Then Billy and Me, which was okay. Ivy and Intrigue, which was a Regency romance. Jeanette Oakes, When Calls the Heart. Prairie Romance, Kate Song, which was an Amish romance. They were all okay. Then in the sci-fi section, it's all Doctor Who books, including all the Doctor Who novellas that they put out last year. I don't know why I keep buying them all, because it's never as good as the show, but I just can't help myself, I guess. Then in the YA section, 3 of these short ebooks, a selection, The Prince, which is from the Selection series, The First Star to Fall, which is a prequel to Across the Star-Swept Sea, which is in my ones to read folder, and The Path to Allegiant. Then there's Perfectly Dateless, which was perfectly innocuous. Neil Gaiman's How to Talk to Girls at Parties, and of course Neil Gaiman is Neil Gaiman, you must read him. Then Geek Girl by Holly Smale, and that was pretty good, it was funny. Now we get into non-fiction. So, I don't know, quite a few of the ones in the fiction section I actually bought, but most of the ones in the non-fiction section I got for free, because they have so many free books on the Kindle all the time. It's great. So here, the most interesting one was Curious Folks Ask. It was science questions. I liked that one. The others were okay too, about wilderness survival, financial things, and quilting. I had read a bunch of quilting books, so. Then in the biography section, The Man-Eaters of Tsavo, which was the basis for the movie, what was it called? The Ghost in the Darkness. And Kate Middleton, Nikola Tesla, both of those were very short, and so I wouldn't have bothered to pay for them. Because they were free, it was okay. But the most interesting one was I Want It Now, which was a autobiography by the girl who played Veruca Salt in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. So that is a good movie, and I really liked that book. Then there were some free cookbooks, my favorite of which was Dining with the Doctor. Then history, Titanic, the Berlin Wall, and the Vietnam War. They are, as their titles imply, very brief histories. This one was really interesting. On this day in Tudor history, it took each day of the year and had events that happened in the Tudor times. I learned a lot from that. Then there are a bunch of free, out-of-copyright history books. They were, I don't know, sometimes paternalistic. Then houses. The most interesting one was this one, The Poetry of Architecture by John Ruskin. And there's a quote in it which I just have to share. He's talking about the room that you have to have windows in. And he says you have to have windows in the breakfast room. It doesn't matter so much if you have them in bedrooms, because as he says, it only makes gentlemen cut themselves in shaving, and ladies never think of anything beneath the sun when they are dressing. Then in the dining room, windows are absolutely useless, because dinner is always uncomfortable by daylight. In the library, people should have something else to do than looking out of the windows. In the drawing room, the uncomfortable stillness of the quarter of an hour before dinner may indeed be alleviated by having something to converse about at the windows, but it is very shameful to spoil a prospect of any kind by looking at it when we are not ourselves in a state of corporal comfort and mental good humour. But the breakfast room, where we meet the first light of the dewy day, the first breath of the morning air, the first glance of gentle eyes, to which we descend in the very spring and elasticity of mental renovation and bodily energy, in the gathering up of our spirit for the new day, in the flush of our awakening from the darkness and the mystery of faint and inactive dreaming, in the resurrection from our daily grave, in the first tremulous sensation of the beauty of our being, in the most glorious perception of the lightening of our life, there indeed our expiation of spirit when it meets the pulse of outward sound and joy, the voice of bird and breeze and billow does demand some power of liberty, some space for its going forth into the morning, some freedom of intercourse with the lovely and limitless energy of creature and creation. Wow, that's quite a sentence. But I disagree. I think you need windows in most every room. Now, in nonfiction language, these are all nothing special. Then in literature, the aforementioned Curiosities of Literature Volumes 1 and 2, which took me a long time to read, the essays of George Eliot, which had her short essay, Silly Novels by Lady Novelists, that was a good essay, a version of the Bible, the Book of War, and The Prince, which are old classics. And then music. Here I have a dozen different old music history books and textbooks that were all free, but they were all written like 100 years ago, and so they're probably only of interest to music teachers, which I am, so they were of interest to me. In the photography section, there were 3 short books. They are short and better in color. Then presidents. This year I'm doing a project where I'm reading a biography on each of the presidents of the United States to learn more about American history, because I'm from Canada, so of course we were taught much more Canadian history. And so right now I'm actually at number 6. In the psychology section, those books were okay, but nothing much to talk about. Then in the travel section, this one I really enjoyed, The Hidden Europe by Francis Tappan, and he took a year or 2 and traveled to each country in Eastern Europe. So there's a chapter on each country and history, what we can learn from it, culture. It was really, really interesting. It was quite a long book, actually, too. And it was free. But I would have been willing to pay for that one. That one was really good. Then, we're almost done, don't worry. In the plays, we have Mr. Pym Passes By A.A. Milne, by the same author who wrote Winnie the Pooh. When I saw that, I'm like, I have to read that. And it was very funny. Then Don Carlos and Mary Stuart by Frederick Schiller. I read those because in Anne of Green Gables, the sequel, the movie, they put on a play, and it's about Mary, Queen of Scots. So I thought it might be this one, Mary Stuart, but I'm not sure still. But it was interesting. Then Our American Cousin, I read that play because that's the one that was being performed when Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. The Duchess of Malfi, I wanted to read that play because it's quoted in two different places. One, a Nero Wolfe novel, and also one of Agatha Christie's Miss Marple mysteries, so I wanted to read that. Then Lover's Vow is that play I wanted to read because it is mentioned in Mansfield Park. And I enjoyed all of those, as much as I enjoyed these. Oscar Wilde's plays, A Woman of No Importance, Lady Windermere's Fan, An Ideal Husband, and The Importance of Being Earnest. If you have not read anything by Oscar Wilde, you must. Then here, I have all of these in physical copies, Shakespeare's plays, but this year I'm doing a project where I'm rereading them, so I'm reading them on my Kindle. Then the last section is poetry. So there's the complete works of Coleridge. There's this one, Music and Other Poems, which is a short book by Henry Van Dyke. Chamber Music, which was poems by James Joyce. The Raven by Poe. And the Make It Fun Guide to Poetry, which was an okay kind of guide to poetry. And then this is one of the only books in the nonfiction section that I actually bought, by Alexander McCall Smith, What W.H. Auden Can Do For You. And I bought it because I love Alexander McCall Smith. So now, stats. In the unread section, 12 books. In the read section, 225 books. Free, 165. I paid for 60 of them. 133 are fiction, 92 were non-fiction. Well, I think this is the longest video I have ever made. Sorry.